everybody. We have the participants are coming in. I can see the numbers are just absolutely increasing. I want to welcome you to the A Small World webinar. My name is Paul Larsen, and today we're going to, or I'm going to help you find your unique voice in life. So love to see as people kind of join us today, where is everybody coming from? We've got Chan, we've got Danielle, we've got Fabian, we've got Jay, we've got Marianne, we've got MH, we've got Alicia just joined us. How wonderful. Can you drop in the chat where you're coming from? And make sure on the chat that when you send it, it goes to both panelists and attendees, if you don't mind. But just let me know, where are you all coming from today? I'd love to kind of see where in the world. Oh, Spain. How did I know that? I thought maybe Fabian might be coming from Spain. That's such a fabulous name. Oh, I didn't mean that way. Like Fabian. Fabian is a fabulous name, but it is. Spain, oh, London. Got a trip planned for London. So we're going to cross the fingers that the UK is going to open up and the US is going to open up and all the countries are going to open up. But I believe in planning and it will happen, right? Oh, Mexico. Beautiful, beautiful. Mexico. Cayman. Oh, Amanda. Cayman. Wonderful. Well, we certainly have, it looks like, a very global group here. I'm going to spend a few minutes talking with you today on some content. I'm going to drip to you. Don't you love that term nowadays? We're going to drip content to you, which basically means I'm going to be speaking to you and I'm going to providing you content over the course of a few minutes. And I hope the content's going to be worthwhile. In fact, I know it's going to be. It's hopefully going to be provoking for you, give you some things to think about as we kind of open ourselves up in the world again, or kind of reopen, right? I'm also at the end of the webinar going to take Q&A, and I'll be taking the Q&A from the Q&A box. So if throughout the presentation for the next few minutes, if you've got any questions that come up, don't hesitate to put them in the Q&A box, and I will go in and review those at the end. So without further ado, here's this is my little boarding music, you know, as we get on. Oh, by the way, let me do this. I created this and I want to make sure you see this. Hold on just a second. Welcome on board. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on board. Fasten your seatbelts. I don't think it's going to be a bumpy ride. Hopefully, we're not going to have a lot of turbulence. We're going to keep ourselves in clear skies, but you never know if we do have some bumps. So make sure those seatbelts are, you know, comfortably tightened for you. But certainly welcome on board. It's wonderful to have all of you here today. And if need be, I won't be serving you any alcohol or any beverages today because that's all locked away for me, but we're going to toast each other as we go through our day today. So again, it's wonderful, wonderful to be here. A little bit about what we're going to be going through today as I share my screen, and who I am and why are you listening to me and who is this guy and what's he doing with all these little signs and everything. So again, my name is Paul Larsen. I'm coming to you from the beautiful city of San Francisco, California. And today we actually have a stupendous June day. Sometimes San Francisco in June and July can be what we call June gloom. We get the marine layer that never leaves. And so people come to San Francisco thinking it's going to be summer. And guess what? It's not. But today it's absolutely beautiful. In the Fahrenheit temperature range, we're about 68 degrees, almost 70. So it's an absolutely spectacular day in San Francisco. Today is also the first full day that we have gotten rid of all of our restrictions from COVID. We have opened completely back up for all businesses and all people to do what they would like to do. So we've been waiting for this for a while. I do know that all different countries and cities are they're somewhere on that journey, right? So I love this slide because how do we open up? And how do we keep ourselves open? And how do we always kind of keep our mind open and our worldview open? And I do want to ask yourself, now how's that? I do want to ask yourself, let me restate that. I want to ask you, as the world opens, as the world reopens, what are you doing to open yourself up? So we've just gone through, and we are going through, and we will be going through tremendous different types of changes, lots and lots and lots of things that have happened over the course of the last few years, but you know, it's all relative. in my lifetime, I'd never had a global pandemic. And we're certainly not done with that at all. And there's certainly lots of loss from that. We don't know what's around the corner even. But as we go through the next few months and the world opens up and we begin to kind of welcome ourselves back to whatever the new landscape is. It's not going back, but it is welcoming the new landscape. Think about what you're doing to open yourself up. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to be talking to you about how do we open ourselves up. I love this. I just love where do we find our happiness, right? Where did you find that? I've been searching for it everywhere. Guess what? I created it myself. And that's what happiness is. Now, whether it be happiness or fulfillment or contentment, we create it ourselves. And today I'm going to give you some tools around what that looks like. By the way, I've got wonderful gifts for you today. Everybody gets a gift. Everybody gets a gift today. At the conclusion, I think Pam, from our wonderful host today from A Small World, at the conclusion of this, once the video is all done and recorded, you'll have access to the video recording, so you'll have access to the slides that I'm showing, and then I've got some extra things that I'm going to be sending all of you today as well. So if there's something that pops up on the screen, you're like, oh, I want to remember that, you will absolutely have access to that. The late Heath Ledger, I thought, did a nice job. You know, he says, everyone you meet always asks if you have a career, or are you married, or do you own a house, as if life was some kind of grocery list. But no one ever asks you if you are happy. And that's what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to be asking you if you're happy. And if you're not, what do we need to do to get you to a level of contentment and fulfillment, especially as we go through the next few months and we open back up? You know, what's interesting here, what Heath was talking about too, is that list. That list is like a science list. And today we're going to be talking really about the art and science of life. Now, I want you to always be careful of this. When you follow the masses, be very, very careful, because sometimes that M is silent. And I don't think we need to look very afar to know that we're following somebody whose M might be silent. So be careful of that. And this is why I want you to learn, how do you forge your own voice? How do you create your own spot in the world, so you're not always following people? It's okay to follow people. It happens. We can choose to follow people, but it's always a choice. So many people in the world today just follow anybody who's got the loudest voice, or who's the biggest celebrity, or who's got the most money, all these different things. And really, we don't want to do that. You can choose to do that if you're going to learn something from that. So be careful when we follow the masses. That M can be really silent. I love, speaking of artists, the wonderful Pablo Picasso. The meaning of life is to find your gift. And that's what I'm hoping you'll get some tools today to kind of find your gift. The purpose of life is to give it away. So it's to serve others. And that doesn't mean that we don't also serve ourselves, because that's what finding our gift is serving ourselves. What inspires you in life? I'm going to share a little bit about some of the folks that I work with, and also my story, where I found sort of my gift. And I don't just keep it to myself. I'm actually giving it away. And man, there's nothing better than to be able to find what inspires you in life and then to give it away. You either live a life of inspiration, or we live a life of forced action. And I think we all understand a little bit about those two paths, because forced action is all about, oh, I've got to get up. I have to do this. I should do this. I need to do this. If those words are always in your vocabulary, I need to do this, I'm forced to do this, I have to do this, then we want to be careful around that. We want to be careful around, are we living a life of forced action, or are we living a life of inspired action? So I'm Paul Larsen. I'm the founder of the Find Your Voice as a Leader Institute, and I'm very excited about the institute because it sounds so official. But what I do in my life, since my last corporate job, which was Adobe Systems, Adobe Technology, which I left about 11 years ago. It's a beautiful company, lovely company. I'm a coach, I'm an author, I'm a facilitator. I love to work with people in all different types of, I guess you could say, scenarios. Sometimes I do one-on-one coaching. Sometimes I do team coaching. I love to speak. I love to present. And so I've created kind of a Find Your Voice as a Leader Institute, and we're going to be talking about voice specifically today. The Institute is, I have a podcast, I've got a book, I've got all these different types of, I guess you could say, learning streams that I've put together. And I'm very, very, very pleased. Talk about finding my gift and finding my passion. Doesn't mean I don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean that I don't learn from those mistakes, but I also have some absolutely wonderful successes around that as well. So that's a little bit about me. And today we're going to be talking about the art and science of our lives, the art and science of our voice, the art and science of how we look at things. I'm a big believer in we need to have both. It's all about blend. It's all about integration. We can have, if we just have all the science without the art, we're missing a lot of the color. But if we have all the color, but not the science, we're missing a lot of that framework. So I love to blend both of those together. The art and science, I'll be bringing that up to you. This is a little bit about me. So pre-COVID, I love to travel. I'm a big traveler. That's why there's such a wonderful alignment between what I do and what I love to do in life and a small world. And I've been so blessed to be able to travel all around the world, just meeting people, learning from everybody, plopping myself down in communities and asking, what can I do here to help in whatever way, shape, or form? Sometimes people have said to me, well, we need that ditch built, or we need to have help building this house, you know, if I'm on a volunteer type of mission. And I think to myself, oh, if they only knew that I really don't know how to do that, but I'm willing certainly to help out. But as long as you've got somebody to come in after me to make sure that house is going to stand up. So what I found through the course of years, right, is taking my gift that we've talked about and how can I serve others with that gift? So I'm blessed to be able to travel and do a lot of volunteer opportunities in terms of coaching people around business, around leadership, around finding your voice. And these are some of the wonderful people I've worked with. That's a firm in Kuala Lumpur. We went on an offsite together down into a beautiful island in Thailand for a leadership on communication skills. The picture over here is me serving breakfast to a beautiful orphanage in just outside of Siem Reap, Cambodia, where I visited several times. Beautiful, beautiful country. And I couldn't get that food out on those things fast enough. I don't think these old bones did the best that they could, but again, serving others. And then this picture over here was a presentation I did. And don't you love that quote up there if you can read it? Travel brings, let's do that. Travel brings power and love back into your life by Rumi. Doesn't it though? No matter if we travel physically or no matter if we travel in our mind. And that was a presentation I was doing at Cebu Pacific for their leaders in Manila. So I've had a lovely, wonderful opportunity to just meet so many people around the world. Everywhere I travel, I just love to experience the world and that community as a traveler, not necessarily a tourist. So I love to kind of meander. I love to go down the back ways. I love to see what people are doing. I love to ask questions. I love to explore. And I love to find things to add to my life. I've learned in my life that when I speak, I learn a lot about myself, such as right now. I'm speaking to you. And I'm learning about myself, am I going, just about how I'm presenting. I'm thinking about sort of the content. I'm thinking about my pace. I'm thinking about my gestures and all these things I'm doing, right? My energy, but I'm learning about myself. I'm not learning so much about you. And I recognize that. I've asked you where you're from and I want to engage more with you. But when I listen, I learn about ourselves. And I think the world needs to do more listening. I think we have speaking down. I think people can speak. I think people speak louder sometimes because they don't think you hear or you understand. So of course, I'm going to speak louder. But what I've learned, and this was the folks in the middle there, that was a Conrad, the Conrad Hotel group in Manila. I did a seminar there. We did a seminar there around communication and around how do you listen deliberately? How do you listen with a purpose? And that was their beautiful leadership team. Because when I listen, or when we listen, we learn about ourselves. Ilana Van Zant is going to be our theme for today. As we learn about our voice, and we learn about what we need to do in our lives to create the life that we want and to find our unique voice and create the legacy and the imprint. I love this quote from her. You have to meet people where they are. In coaching, that's what we do. We meet people where they are and we help them into the future. But sometimes you have to meet people where they are, and sometimes you have to leave them there. When I read this, I thought, brilliant, because sometimes we meet people where they are. So we have a meeting of the mind, so to speak. And then it's about a decision to say, you know what? That's not an energy I necessarily want in my life. I don't need you in my orbit. You might not need me in your orbit, right? Because we all have our solar systems that are going to be our success. And sometimes we just need to leave them, right there. So that's about creating boundaries. That's the power of boundaries. That's self-compassion. We do enough self-infliction sometimes on ourselves. So understand that boundaries are a form of self-compassion, actually a form of self-love. When we can set boundaries up, and then we can meet people where they are, so we respect them, but we leave them there. So, tourist or traveler? I asked this question the other day on my social media feed, got lots of incredible responses around this. So since all of us are from all over the world and we all have probably an energy and a passion for travel, whether we, again, and we're all looking forward to doing that. Before the webinar started, I was talking to Pam from A Small World, our lovely host today. And I said, people are just getting ready to go anywhere, right? They just want to go. We're just all kind of getting stir crazy. And it shows us what we've taken for granted is our ability to be mobile. And we've got I believe it's Singapore Airlines and a few other airlines around the world are flying planes of people just around to nowhere, just so people can get in a plane, fly, have a meal, and they land back after a couple hours. And people are paying good money to do that. I never thought I would see the day where people would actually pay money to get on a plane and fly nowhere, fly to nowhere, just to fly, right? But for those of us that love to travel, that love to move, that love all the spirit of what travel represents, I think there's definitely a market for that. But now, hopefully, as we begin to open up, the planes will actually fly somewhere and carry us all around the world to see each other. Tourist or traveler, ladies and gentlemen. So a few years ago, I was at a client site in the southern part of the United States, actually in Arkansas. Beautiful state. It was the fall time frame here in the United States in our hemisphere. So I think it was about late September, early October. And it was beautiful. The Arkansas has beautiful colorings with the trees and that fall foliage that is just incredible. I was at a hotel with about 65 other group travelers. Now, I was by myself because I was there for business. They were on a bus, right? And I remember meeting some of these people in the hotel. The hotel was fairly small. And so you couldn't help but meet, especially when there's a big group. And those of us that travel, we know when we see those buses, we know that there's people that are going to be part of a group traveler, of which a lot of us have probably partaken in. Here's what I found so interesting when I was talking to them. So I was in the hotel and I was just kind of finishing up some work on my laptop, and I had a chance to kind of just talk to some folks that were part of that group tour. And I said, well, what are you all doing, and where are you going? And this one gentleman looked at me and he goes, we got bags at 7, breakfast at 8, and bus at 9. And I said, excuse me, I had no idea. It was like I was in Bizarro World. I didn't know what he actually was talking about. And I said, because I asked him what they were going on with this tour. And he goes, bags at 7, breakfast at 8, bus at 9. And he repeated it again as if that was going to help clarify for me. And I think it was his wife who might have been sitting next to him. They're lovely people. And she says, oh, he's telling you these are the instructions that our tour guide gave us. We have to have our bags outside of our door at 7 a.m. We come down for breakfast at 8 a.m. and we get on the bus at 9 a.m. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, okay, thank you very much. Okay, now I understand that part. I still have no idea, like, what is the tour? Oh, she said, it's a tour. We're going around the different areas of the South to kind of experience a lot of the fall colors in the South, because there's, the beauty of the changing of the seasons and so forth, and the different areas of Arkansas and other parts of the states. And I said, oh, wow, that sounds great. I said, where are you off to next? Because we were in Arkansas. She goes, I don't know. She goes, they have all that figured out. She goes, we just, they have the itinerary. She goes, we have to get our bags at 7, breakfast at 8. And then I looked at her, I go, bus at 9. And she goes, yes, that's right. And I couldn't help but just to think that was what they were, that's what they were repeating over and over. And I, thanked them. I wished them well. I went up, to my room. And as I was going up to my room, there were people in the elevator as part of their tour. And it was almost like it was almost like a reality TV show where I'm in the elevator and I'm hearing the people in the elevator who are part of the tour say the same thing. Oh, yeah, we got bags at 7, breakfast at 8, bus at 9. Now, make sure the bus is at 9. We have to have the bags out. Make sure that bag has to be out at 7 o'clock in front. And I'm just sitting there thinking, they are on this beautiful tour. They are going to be experiencing so much, but all they're concerned about is these next pieces of instruction that really have nothing to do with what they're experiencing. They're important instructions, but the mindset was just fixed on bags at 7, breakfast at 8, bus at 9. And that has stayed with me to this day, because where we are and where we want to be, we have to have a willingness to believe in ourselves, right? So when we're looking at the world and we're looking at it through a worldview of a tourist, where our itinerary is all planned for us, where we're going is all planned. All we have to do is get the bags out, eat some breakfast, and get on that bus, and you'll be taken to where you go. And maybe you'll know where you're going. I still, to this day, I had no idea actually where they actually went. I could just, surmise. And maybe you'll experience something and maybe you won't. But that is not necessarily up to us. They've given control of that over to others. That's the difference, right, between a tourist and a traveler. A traveler looks at where we are, and a traveler looks at where we want to go. And then we have to have a willingness to trust in ourselves, to believe in ourselves, to create our own itinerary, to create our own accountability. Now, I wish all the tourists in the world, I wish them well. And I'm so happy that they're at least experiencing parts of the world, right? They're seeing things, but they're seeing it through the mind of a tourist, the mindset of a tourist. And I'm one of these people that I believe we have to be our own interior designer. Now, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Legos. Yeah, I love Legos. I grew up with Legos and I use Legos in my work, believe it or not. I find a reason to use any kind of play toy in my work. And I was with one of my clients the other day, and she said to me, and we were talking about Legos, and she says, Paul, you're a great interior designer. And I laughed at her, and I thought to myself, you haven't seen my house. I go, I am so not an interior designer. That part of me does not necessarily exist. And we laughed about that because I said, no, I don't see that. And she says, no. Interior of myself, the interior of how we're put together. So think about that in your world. We create our own interior. We design who we are. So I am my own interior designer. So whether we use our Legos, whether we use any other tool, you create your own interior of who you are. And you can make it one of abundance and beautiful blue skies and lots of growth and lots of trees, or you can make it one of scarcity. I come up from a place of fear. I have a fixed mindset. Things are always going to be the same. I can never change. I can never grow. It's always your choice, scarcity or abundance, because we are our own interior designer. Nobody else can do that for us. So it's either a fixed or a growth. We're going to spend today talking about the growth mindset. That's where I love to live. That's where I love to nest. The growth mindset can be messy because there's lots of things going on. There's lots of synapses that go on. The fixed mindset can be very structured. It can be very rigid. It can be sort of like only one way to do things. It can be very simple in the sense of getting things done. But the growth mindset, lots of different things going on. The growth mindset is, always kind of like lots of color, lots of different highways in which to take, lots of shortcuts that we can look at. Some may work out, some may not. In the growth mindset, we fail and we make mistakes and we learn from those. But the growth mindset can also provide us the psychological safety that allows us to make those mistakes and learn from those. If we make a mistake in the fixed mindset, we beat ourselves up over it, or other people beat ourselves up over it. If you work with a manager or a leader or in a team, or you grew up in an environment where you could never, ever make a mistake, then you don't have that safety. You don't have that safety to take the risk. And what I'm saying today is I want us to be able to take that risk, to really bring color into our growth, our development of who we are. How do we find that voice? So about 30 years ago, I got sober. So bingo, right there. There's a little bit about me that you didn't know. So I got sober. That was certainly by choice. Alcohol was my drug of choice, so to speak. So even though I love to celebrate and so forth, this would probably be apple cider at this point in here. But I celebrate and I love the choices that people make in their lives around how they want to celebrate. I don't judge that at all. But 30 years ago, I got sober. The benefits and the perks of sobriety are, I love the synopsis of here. I've unburdened myself of things. I tell my own story. I have stronger relationships. I've learned over those 30 years to really love myself more. I look at life more as an inspiration. I don't look at it in terms of the gray sky and the cloudiness. And if I do have gray skies and cloudiness, because I live in San Francisco, I see the beauty of that. I learned from that, right? I have a lot less burdens that I'm carrying around. I have a lot of clarity of who I am. I'm telling you all of this, not because I want accolades for what I've done. I'm telling you this because this is what I bring to help you find your voice. So as a coach, I bring sobriety to people's lives, not from abstinence of alcohol or drugs, but bringing what I've learned as a sober person and bringing that into their lives, into their leadership, into their relationships. So that's the whole crux of sort of what I do in terms of helping you find your voice. Let me tell you, I really found my voice quite a few years ago when I was at Adobe and my father passed away. This was 2009. So it's like 10, 11 years ago now, right? Oh, gosh, 11, 12 years ago now. And I was sitting at his memorial service and everyone was talking about what a wonderful man he was. And he's right over here. This guy right here. He was a wonderful man. He had a wonderful life. And people were talking about that, right? And then I thought to myself, self? What are they going to say about me? What are people going to say about me and my life? What have I done to serve them? Here is my father, who I knew was an incredible human being and very inspirational. But what were people going to say about me? And was I going to find my true legacy and my true brand in what I was doing? And the question there and the answer to that was easily no. So I embarked on a journey to really find my voice. And what does that mean when I talk about voice? It's not the voice that I'm using here. It's not whether I'm talking low or talking high or talking fast or talking slow. Not really. It's all about the values you have in your life. It's all about your outcomes. It's all about the influence that you create in your life. It's all about the courage that you reveal, and it's all about the expression. So I wrote a book a few years after that. The book didn't come easily. Though I dealt with imposter syndrome, I've dealt with all the things that come up in our lives. But the book came out, and it was about finding your voice as a leader. That's one of the first gifts you'll get as a participant here. I'll give you all a copy of my book, Find Your Voice as a Leader. So you'll get that a little bit later after our webinar. So you can decide if that is helpful for you to you or not. But I wanted to pass that on to you, to give that and your ability to sort of help you find your voice. Because a lot of what I'm talking about here is in the book. The book is a series of sort of, think of it as like a workbook around finding your voice. The very first piece, this is one of the malls I love to go to when I'm in Kuala Lumpur. And it's a mall that's also attached to KL Central, which is the big train station there in Kuala Lumpur. So this is the first part of finding your voice, is discovering my values. And why do I have a map of a train station here, right, that's attached to a mall? Our values help direct us. Our values are our GPS. Our values guide us in our life. So whenever you've had issues in your life where you are triggered a certain behavior, you react a certain way, more than likely one or more of your values is being compromised. We've all had that happen in our lives, where a relationship, friendship, our career, something we do to ourselves, we compromise really what's important to us, which are our values. So discovering your values, and I have an exercise in the book that will take you through that, will really help you to clarify, again, one of the things I learned in sobriety, that clarity of what's really important to me in life, right now, at this point in my life. So discovering your values. I certainly believe in whatever we choose, whatever our values are, but whatever we choose, water will make it grow. So whatever we choose to water, self-compassion, self-love, eating healthy, negative self-talk, self-care, more sleep, a lot of self-doubt, isolating ourselves. If we water any of those things, it will continue to grow. One of the things I do as a coach, first with myself as a coach, self-coaching, along with the coach I have in my life, but working with other folks, is what are you watering? What are you nurturing? If you're nurturing mindfulness, wonderful. If you're nurturing self-compassion, let's figure out making sure that that's aligned to what you want. But if you're nurturing negative self-talk, or you're nurturing isolation, or you're nurturing self-doubt, guess what? It's going to continue to grow. So let's figure out ways in which we can pivot from that. So that's, and the very first way is really, what do you value in your life? What are those beliefs you might have in your life that could be limiting as well? And what can we do around that, so that making sure that you're nurturing what you want to nurture? So discovering your values is really key. Secondly, mapping your outcomes. So how do I map my outcomes? And this is all about, where am I going? Where am I going in my life? How do I get from A to B? We've already talked today about travel, and you see I've got some fun travel stuff here. I've got the Pan Am poster here, and the TWA poster here, and I've got the most of you probably would not know this, but this was an airline called Hughes Air West. Yes, the Howard Hughes. This was back in the 70s in the United States. I loved their design. I thought it was very, very modern for the time. My dad was a pilot, actually, for Hughes Air West, and since they became Republic, Northwest, and Delta. We all map where we want to go. We know how to get to places. We can drive, we can walk, we can run, we can train, we can fly, we can cruise, whatever that might be. But do we know where we're going? It's really important to map the outcomes I want in my life, the vision I have for myself, the vision I have for my families, the vision I have for my team, my organization, whatever that might be. But certainly the vision I have for myself. What do I want to feel? What do I want to experience? How do I describe that? Other than, if we don't map our outcomes, we're almost like, we're almost at drift. In coaching, we actually call it drifting. We just kind of drift away. So mapping our outcomes is a way to really put ourselves and anchoring ourselves, and then align those outcomes to our values. You know, otherwise, I love this. I just love the way that we can paint ourselves, and then before you know it, we've painted ourselves into a comfort zone, and we all know what happens in the comfort zone. It can stifle us. It can get on top of us. It can cover us up because we paint ourselves, we draw ourselves into that. So secondly, or thirdly, after I've done that, how do I influence myself? Not just other people, but it starts with ourselves. Sometimes we rush to influence other people. We rush to lead other people. We rush to communicate with other people. We have to start with ourselves first. So how do I use my influence? One of the things I do in coaching, and I've learned this myself, is do you respond to yourself or do you react? What's the difference between reacting and responding? Many times reacting is fear-based. It's that fight or flight. It's where we put up walls, or we can have a victim or fixed mindset. We can avoid things, but we react without thinking. We react without purpose. We react without being deliberate. And we do it all the time. The last few years, I mean, it just seems like everyone just reacts to everything. All you have to do is go on any of your favorite social media channels or apps, and people just react all the time. What do you think social media is, right? It's just reacting. Whether we're liking, whether we're tweeting, whether we're posting, whether we're connecting, that's a reaction. But how many times do we react to ourselves and really think about the response we want to have? And when I say responding can come from a place of not fear, but more of love or more of fulfillment. Responding is, again, going back to the boundaries I talked about. It's respecting the boundaries. It comes from an accountability and a responsibility. It's all about how do we collaborate with each other, and how do I respond in a very deliberate and purposeful fashion. And responding can only take an extra few seconds. Reacting is usually instantaneous. When people react, it's usually like that. We all do it. We all have things happen in our lives and we just react. But if we can take those extra few seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, sometimes a little longer, to figure out, how do I want to respond to this? That can make all the difference in terms of how we influence ourselves through any kind of life event, any kind of life scenario, and help co-create our future. I love this technique, which comes from positive psychology. It's called the, there we go, the stress interruption techniques. And it's called SOBER. It has nothing to do with sobriety, by the way. As I said, I'm bringing sobriety into what we're talking about, because there's a clarity around that. So I just love this. First thing is stop. How do you interrupt when you're reacting or you're under stress? How do you, what's one of the first things you do? Stop whatever you're doing. Observe what is happening in your body and mind. I do this all the time with myself. I do this all the time with my clients. Stop, observe. Okay, I'm calling myself this, or I'm calling her this, or I'm judging this person, or I'm judging myself, or I think I'm a fake or fraud, like an imposter, whatever it might be. Observe what you're doing. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathing in and breathing out. And focus on the what moment? The present moment. Because we get caught up with the past and we can get caught up with the future. But really all that matters is the present, right? That's all we have right now is the present. When we started this webinar a few minutes ago, that's the past now. Doesn't really matter anymore. What matters is what we're doing right now, the present. So breathing in and breathing out recenters you and regrounds you. I'm sure many of you practice a lot of mindfulness. I usually, folks that enjoy the world like all of you do, and are from all different parts of the world like all of us are, usually have a mindfulness technique, right, that we bring in. Fourthly, is to expand. Expand to your whole body and your surrounding. Then begin to sort of relax and look and expand your body to kind of figure out, like, okay, where am I? What am I doing? What do I need to stop doing? What do I need to start doing? What do I need more of or less of in this moment? So We breathed in and out to provide us that centering and grounding. And then we just expand that and just say, okay, now I can firmly plant and look around, figure out, okay, this is what's happening right now. And then we can respond in a mindful way, more with awareness rather than autopilot. Remember the story of the tourist and traveler. Tours are on autopilot. You know, bags at 7, breakfast at 8, bus at 9. That was the autopilot response that I heard, that I still know to this day, right? And I'm sure they all know that as well. That's autopilot. That's a reaction. Not a bad reaction. It's just reaction. But when we react to other things in our life, we're on autopilot. And what the response does and what this technique can do is get you out of autopilot. It's kind of like going back to our planes. When a plane is flying, you know, and the pilot needs to get off, take the autopilot off and take control of the plane for whatever reason, that's what they're doing. And that's what we need to do. Autopilot can be okay as long as we choose it. As long as we choose it and we know about it. But many times we go through life and we don't even know we're on autopilot. And that to me is a shame. When I meet people in organizations, especially, and they've worked at this company for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Can I hear 40? Uh-huh. Can I hear 50? Uh-huh. And I ask them, what's your legacy here? You've been here for decades. It's incredible. What's your legacy? What are you leaving? What's your imprint? What do people think about you as a leader? And they look at me and they're like, nobody's ever asked me that question before. I don't know. That to me is sad because they have been on autopilot for that many years. They've been in a relationship with somebody for years, and we just goes on autopilot, and we're not contributing anymore to it. We need to sometimes stop and shake ourselves and take control of our own plane, right? So this is one technique in which to do that. Da-da-da. Let me just check my timing here as I'm looking. Da-da-da. Oh, okay. I have just a few more moments. So this will be something I'll share a little bit later, that story. Reveal my courage is next in terms of voice. How do I reveal my courage? And everyone is courageous. It's a matter of when we reveal how we choose to reveal that. So I don't believe when I hear people say, oh, I don't have any courage, or I don't like to do this, or I'm a coward. Yeah, we all have courage. It's about how we choose to reveal our courage. And those are baby steps. Think about a baby. You know, babies take small steps. They fall, they get back up, they have support. You know, they fall, they get back up, they get support. That's what baby steps are. And so if you want to do something in your life, and you really want to change something in your life, or you want to experience something differently, we take the baby steps. Very seldom do the large scale steps stick. We need something that's going to stick, and that's going to be the baby steps. I love this from Sylvia Duckworth. The magic happens outside of the comfort zone. Your comfort zone can be your comfort zone, right? We create our own comfort zone. Remember the drawing, right? We can create our own comfort zone. Where the magic happens is outside of that. So Eleanor Roosevelt had this great quote. I'm sure a lot of you have heard this before. You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. That's responding. That's not reacting, right? You must do the thing you think you cannot do. I love that part. Hashtag, you must do the thing you think you cannot do. I love that because sometimes we have to take those steps out of our comfort zone. And those steps can be small baby steps, but take the steps out of the comfort zone. That's what travelers do. Tourists, not so much. Travelers take those steps. Lastly, the last part of voice as I end today is how do I author my expression? So we have our values, we have our outcomes, we have our influence, we reveal our courage. And then lastly, how do I author my unique artistic expression? What is that going to be? What is my brand? What is my legacy? What is my imprint that I'm going to leave on myself and others in this world? Am I going to be ego-driven, or do I want to be one in the ecology of the world with everyone else, eco-driven? Remember, it's not enough to just be unique. You need to be useful as well. And I love this. I just love the this fork can be very unique, but we also have to be useful, not just to ourselves, but how do we serve others? So Find Your Voice as a Leader is all about my values, my outcomes, my influence, my courage, and my expression. And this just gives you kind of a quick synopsis of what it is. I love this. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. You have to create the safety in your world to make a mistake. The world won't always create a safe environment for you to make a mistake. And that's what the burdens we carry, right? For those of you that lead organizations, the very top characteristic of a quality performing team and manager is a manager who creates psychological safety on their team. So people can fail without punitive. And I think this is going to be absolutely key. So I had this slide up I was in Bangkok, and I was given a beautiful presentation, or excuse me, a presentation to beautiful people. I don't think the presentation was all that beautiful, but the presentation was to beautiful people in the audience. And somebody saw this, said, wait a minute, wait, that's spelled wrong. They saw the slide before it came up. They're like, this is spelled wrong. I thought that was so cute, because it was like, absolutely, I know it is. And lastly, I just want to say, if you're not familiar with Ikigai, right? This is the Japanese philosophy, and I wish I could spend a little bit more time on it today, but there's beautiful books on it. It really is, how do we find our life purpose, the reason for living, something that makes you get out of bed in the morning. And this is the beautiful concentric circles of what Ikigai represents. It's what we love to do. It's what the world needs. It's what you're good at, but it's also what you can be paid for, because we have to eat. We have to travel. We have to keep a roof over our heads, wherever that may be. We have to buy clothes or whatever we love to do. So it's not just about following your passion. It is about what can we be paid for. So if you're not familiar with Ikigai, and I have a feeling a lot of you might be, pick up a book on it. There's some wonderful books on Ikigai, but it's worthy of really, I use a lot of that in the coaching that I do as helping people find their voice. And remember this, you were born an original. Don't die a copy. We all were born original, but what happens throughout our life is we get normed. We get normed from our childhood. We get normed in school. We get normed by our friends. We get normed by our family. We get normed by the organizations we work with. And we become much more constricted and much more conforming. Okay, and that's okay as long as you're choosing that and you're not on autopilot. But don't die a copy of somebody else. You are original. So don't become a wandering generality, as Zig Ziglar says. Be a meaningful specific. So in other words, don't just wander around aimlessly unless you choose to do that, right? Stand for something. Find your unique voice and stand for it. Lastly, why do we only rest in peace? Why can't we live in peace too? And I think this will be a question we'll be asking ourselves over and over again in the world. We're always like, rest in peace, rest in peace. Well, you know what? I want to live in peace. I don't want to just rest in peace when it's time for me to transition. I want to live in peace too. And that's what bringing sobriety, that clarity of thought can be to your life. You're finding your voice. That can bring a peacefulness and a tranquility. Still have got issues in our lives. Life is life, but it's how we deal with that. So that's what I do. I help people create their voice of inspiration, to really find that spark of inspiration by discovering their values, focusing on their outcomes, using their influence, revealing their courage, and then branding that artistic expression. I love what I do in my life. So I've been able to find that. And these are the people that I thank for that. My wonderful, wonderful father, mother, brother, and sister who are no longer here. They're no longer here from a physical space, but they guide me every single day spiritually. And they really help me find my voice in my life. And that's why I love my gift and I want to give that back. So that concludes our time. I have some time now. Great, for some questions. I do see that we have some Q&A. So let me go and stop the share, and go into the Q&A. Ba-bum, ba-bum. Do I have more books? Yeah, you know what I'll do, Jason. Thank you for the question. I do have some books that I would recommend. You know, I think that's what your question might be. Do I have more books that I would recommend? As you can see, I'm kind of a big reader. I love to read, but I'm also a reader that if I can't get into something within a few pages, I have to kind of put it down, maybe come back to it later. So something has to really be inspiring for me to read. But I'll send a list of the books that I find very helpful. I'll send that to Pam. So when she sends out the information, you'll get a list of those books. By the way, one off the top of my head that I can just give you right now is called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. I think a lot of you might know Ryan Holiday as an author. He's written quite a few books. Ego is the Enemy is another book he's written. But Ryan Holiday is a big proponent of the Stoics, that philosophy, the ancient philosophy, which is so modern for nowadays. But the obstacle is the way. It really helps us get through things in our life with a certain traveler's worldview. So that's one book right away. But I'll give a list out when I send that to Pam. Okay, Anonymous, you say, what if I don't know what I'm good at? I think I'm average at everything. Okay, maybe you're average. What are you inspired to do? That's the key. It's not a question of judging yourself to be good at something or not. I don't necessarily judge myself to be a good coach or a bad coach. I don't judge myself to be a good house builder or a bad house builder, although I do judge myself. You saw me judge myself earlier on that. What are you inspired to do? Reframe the question. It's not always going to be something it's not always going to be something that you're good at. It's what you like to do. You know, do you ever find yourself doing something at 9 a.m. and you look at the clock and it's 12 noon and you have no idea where the time went? Whatever you're doing there probably is something that you're inspired to do. And that could include sleeping for someone like me. Do you have any tips on mindfulness and grounding yourself? Absolutely. So, you know, there's so many ways that we can practice that mindfulness. You know, I know a lot of folks love there's so many apps nowadays, right? You've got Headspace, you've got Calm. There's so many different ways in which to practice mindfulness. If you had asked me that question, I love that question, Alicia. If you had asked me that question a few years ago, I would say, I don't know, meditate. I don't know, breathe. I don't know, whatever works for you. I might still answer it that way. But about 3 years ago, I really sat in a space where I was judging myself and judging others very, very harshly. So I really opened up myself to like the gratitude journal, which I know a lot of people like, oh, here we go. He's thanking everyone for everything. I wouldn't say I thanked everyone for everything, but I really started doodling and writing in journals. And I'm not a journal. This was not somebody who, you know, I'm a product of the 60s and 70s. I grew up with Oprah on TV, but I still didn't journal. I still didn't do all of that. I now take the time each morning, 15 minutes to 30 minutes, depending on what my day looks like, to really sit and write. And when I say I write, it could be just words, bullet points, gratitude, what I'm feeling, which helps ground myself. The exercise I gave you about the sober breakage in terms of how you break your thoughts, it's a wonderful exercise to do in the morning of how we respond to the day. Because think about this, we get up each day and we end up reacting to the day. I guarantee that if you're like me and you get emails and people and everything else, how do you respond to the day? And that sober exercise I gave you by positive psychology is a wonderful way. Start small with mindfulness. If you don't like to meditate, don't. There's some wonderful meditation teachers that are on those apps that I talked about. And certainly there's ways in which to meditate to unburden yourself. So that's where I would start with that. Do you recommend vision boards? Absolutely. So let me tell you about vision boards. I think 4 years ago, my financial advisor, of all people, somebody who's really linear in numbers, really recommended vision boards to me. So you know what I did? I went out and bought this beautiful cardboard at my local drugstore, the CVS drugstore, and it had trifold cardboard. And then I got all these magazines that we don't get magazines a lot, right, anymore. But I cut up all these magazines and I plastered this cardboard. But guess what? I just did it from the science perspective. I didn't look at the art side of it. In other words, I was just doing it to checklist it. There wasn't a lot of inspiration around it. So the vision board was beautiful when it was done, but it really didn't speak to my interior design. It was like, oh, I want that, I want that, I want this, I want that, I want that. You know, I really didn't sit and respond to how I created the vision board. I reacted to her recommendation to do it. It's a beautiful lesson. Since then, vision boards can be incredibly powerful, but don't make them a work of art if you're not inspired to do that. Don't compare them to anything else if you're not inspired to do that. So make a vision board is another way in which to be mindful and which to help co-create your future, right? But only if you're inspired to do that. So beautiful question. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Zoltan, for that. Fabian, have you read the book, Practicing the Power of Now? Absolutely. Now, I don't know if it's the same book, if it's the Eckhart Tolle book, but The Power of Now, absolutely. And then Eckhart Tolle's other book, which is A New World or A New Earth. I think I'm getting one of those. See, I'm one of these people, by the way. I'm so sorry. I know what I like, but I never know the exact title of that song or book. I'm terrible around that. That's why I have to send you the book usually afterwards. But Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, absolutely. Because that's what he talks about, is being present, how to be present in your life right now. So Fabian, thank you so much for that. And you know, Fabian's from Spain, which is probably one of my most favorite countries. It's just there's an energy and a beauty there. And I remember walking. I spent some time pre-COVID down in the beautiful town of Cordoba, and just walking it at night when everything had kind of settled and all the kind of the day tourists had left to go back to Seville or wherever they may go. And I just walked those streets there, and it's just an absolutely beautiful, beautiful place. But it's the power of now. It's the power of being where you are right now. In that case, I just had this beautiful memory of Cordoba in Spain, and just being present with that. And it's those types of things that I can tell you about now that kind of make up who I am, right? It makes up the mosaic of who I am. So whatever you do, make sure you always give yourself a thumbs up. You know, you're the only one who should judge yourself, and be sensitive to that. Make sure you put some self-compassion and your love into your life. I go, life is life. It can be difficult. It can be hard. It can be gracious. It can be wonderful, but be generous to yourself. And then lastly, from my days at the airline, bye-bye. Bye-bye. I want to thank you for flying us today. I want to thank you for keeping your seatbelts on and being a lovely, lovely audience. You've been wonderful. Again, I'll send all that information to Pam, and then she'll send it out to you at a little bit, hopefully not, it won't be that long. And feel free to connect with me at any point. I'm available to you on email, LinkedIn, Facebook, Insta, and Twitter. And Clubhouse. And so if you ever want to just chat, I'm available to you. So thank you all so much. I just want to say goodbye. Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, Florence, Alicia, MH, Jason, Fabienne, Zoltan. Thank you. Those are wonderful. Thank you, Amanda. Have a great rest of the week. We'll see each other somewhere in the world. I guarantee it. We'll see each other. We'll connect somewhere in the world, and we'll go together. Take care, everybody. And remember, as the world opens up, really be deliberate and purposeful about how you open up. Take care. Bye-bye.